Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here tonight. This is an opportunity for you guys to learn some stuff tonight. Those should know next week, this time, is election is going on. And in the state of Massachusetts, there's a couple of questions on the ballot. One particular question that we're talking about today is the second question, question number two, and what people should do. There's If you don't know, the question is, should the MCAS be required to graduate here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts? Some people say yes, some people say no. We have some people here that says yes. So we're going to introduce them to you all. We have Nellie Medina and Hannah Wussif. Got it. Did I? Sorta. I got it. That's
Weinsack.
Weinsack.
I appreciate you asking.
Yes.
It's a tough one.
Yes,
and
yes.
I have to do it every day.
Well, thank you for allowing me to practice something new today. Thank you guys for being here. And just introduce yourself. Tell people a little bit about yourselves before we jump into the question and the debate and why you feel like you're so strong. You got the buttons on. You guys are for real.
Hi, so I'm Nellie Medina. I'm a Worcester resident and a mother of an 8-year-old child on the autism spectrum. I've been working in education justice for the last decade, and I'm not a big fan of the MCAS as a graduation requirement because it's, to me, a way to sort children who don't test well out of opportunities. Not all the children who take the MCAS are afforded the same resources. There are disparities in studying, disparities in support systems. And so if all the children are measured by the same scale and they don't all have the same resources, how is it fair? I'm also concerned about students who are learning English. If you're here for 8 months and they make you take the MCAS, imagine moving to France and having to take a test in French after 8 months, how that would be. And then I'm concerned about children who have disabilities and don't test well. I'm a 4.0 GPA, but if you ask me to test, then it's going to take a while. And so with all this in mind, and just, really believing that every child should have the opportunity to succeed, I'm against it.
Okay. Hannah, what is your thoughts? You're a yes person, seems like.
Nellie, I want to thank you for also being here with me. There are a lot of accomplishments that you've been through, and I just, I'm on the other side of it, right? Like, so as a educator in Worcester, I'm in the classroom with the students who are missing class time because they're being asked to retest and retake this quiz. And so instead of talking to students about social justice and about their rights and about, financing and how to balance a checkbook, they're losing time going back and sitting in a room and circling in bubbles. And, then when you look at the effects that it has on the budget too, that our classes are filled with testing and the classes that need to prepare for the testing. And so there's all this sacrifice for the things that should be fun and give us joy about learning, right? Like, getting to play music and getting to take a class about storytelling through graphic novels and superheroes, right? Like, we're going back and taking the same quiz for a biology test that dictates the rest of their lives. And I really truly wonder if I went to take this biology test now as a functional adult participating in our economy, civically engaged, I truly wonder if I would pass that biology test. I truly wonder if most of the adults that are functional in this world would be able to pass that biology test right now. Mm-hmm. And I think too, when we think about all these great measures that we have to see what our students know and how they participate in our world, there are a lot of meaningful ways to understand that, but MCAS is just one of them. And so let's treat it as such. Students do so many great things to be able to be on their way to graduate high school. And I am just so disheartened that that they would have to suffer through a test that I think maybe it was like 6 years ago, students were asked to defend slavery, like in one of the open responses on the test. And it's, I understand now that there are committees to try to prepare for these types of things, but I just think we can do better. Even standardized testing to begin with has an origin in white supremacy and eugenics. And I just think that if we're gonna talk about educating a child, that probably needs to be the last part of the conversation.
Or the first part, right? The history of racism, eugenics, and standardized testing. We actually had a forum for Worcester last year at the JMAC, and it walked you through the whole history, which is pretty amazing that this is actually a thing. My main concern lately is, after talking to some students, is how if they don't pass it in the 10th grade, they don't get to move on to regular classes with the rest of the students. If it takes them 2 years to pass that test, to be ready, they will stay in that class every day.
So it's now attributed like it's a special ed class to take the MCAS.
Is it like that, Hannah?
It certainly feels that way, and I think too. Right, so it's the classes, it's the money that we diverge to that, but it's also, that it feels like a track for students, that really, like, every day for a lot of urban schools, we feel like we're fighting to keep students in school, that we are fighting against these forces that exist in our society that really pressure students to drop out. There's so many students that, could be working a job and come into school. And every day it's a conversation of why this is worth their time and not the time that they could be making money to help put food on the table or to help pay rent.
Yes.
I was going to ask about attendance.
And so when you put a test in front of a child who really has to worry about where their next meal is coming from, and you say, this is how you graduate, and you're gonna sit in this room until you're done with this test all day. For some of us that are long test takers, right? And to say, like, this is what's worth your time, this is what determines whether you are worthwhile. And, these kids have a strong work ethic, they want to be able to help their families pay these bills, but we want to make sure that they invest in themselves and their education so that where they're working now is not their whole trajectory of their life, that there's a lot more that they'll be able to do with that.
And really quickly, part 2 to this is that I worked at Quincy Community College, and I was a mentor outreach specialist, and we helped put together the mentorship program. We surveyed over one summer 190 students, and as I was quantifying the data, it broke my heart to see how many students were taking prerequisite classes for 2 years. They came out of Worcester Public Schools. So not only did they fail because they didn't know anything, all they knew is how to pass the test, but once they passed it, they didn't know anything else, because when they went to take the college readiness classes, they failed. So they're in college for 2 years, and some of them had babies, they had to work or they had to support their family, so they leave. And when they came back in 5 years, they had a bill, so they couldn't.
We need to talk more about that with the administrations on some of these schools, because the colleges need to pressure the high schools to get them not ready to graduate, but ready for life, prepared for life. I was going to ask about attendance. How does the attendance play in this? Because if I'm a student and I'm coming to this one classroom, now I'm building up problems with my attendance because I'm not going to that one classroom, so I could be made to feel a certain kind of way.
Absolutely.
And then to not proceed with my class, the guys and females that I came in with.
Yes.
I'm in the 10th grade technically.
Gives me chills just to.
And then everybody is moving on, and I didn't think of that.
Oh.
I was thinking, like, I never thought that they would put somebody in one class. I thought you would have to take the test whenever they pull you out of class, go take the test type of thing.
So let's really talk about school funding then, because what you bring up is 2 indicators of school funding. How students grow on the standardized test, MCAS, student attendance and how many students are enrolled in higher level classes that also involve standardized testing.
Right.
So all three indicators are also socioeconomically disadvantaged. And when you look at how that compounds, urban schools are often the strongest punished. And so also part of this is potentially taking one piece that will still be sadly deeply entrenched in the funding formula, but at least it doesn't also continue to punish students. And that's really what we're talking about when we talk about MCAS, but it's heartbreaking to see all these things compound. But one thing that really comes to mind for me when you talk about attendance is, I have a student who's known for skipping classes and has been skipping classes for years. When I called home, mom said it was an issue since elementary school. And I just think about how sometimes the harm that's done inside of the system can get sort of like ignored and washed away. But I think really what you're talking about is students feeling hurt and attacked in spaces and how we bring them back in. And so, when I approached this student at lunch, happened to see her there and said, hey, like, I haven't seen you since the first week of school and like, I miss you. Just come back and hang out,
Yep.
Like, we'll figure it out. Like, come to class. But it's like, you spend so much time with all these pressures and all these aspects of education that really aren't about your growth and helping you succeed. And I really hope that part of what we can do too with making this test less harmful is that we can spend more time really thinking about, especially post-COVID, like what these students really need.
Right.
There's a lot that has changed about education, and we as educators need the time to grow ourselves and figure out how to better support students. And I can promise you that bubbling in circles is not one of those things.
So the question on the ballot is, should the MCAS be required for graduation?
It should not. It should
Okay.
not.
And so it's a no.
It's a hard no.
Okay.
I grew up
But
in the
we
foster
say
system.
no to MCAS by voting.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I was raised in the system, and I can tell you that children are moving around sometimes, 10 and 13 times, 10 to 13 to 14 times
Yes.
within a high school,
Easily.
experience. And imagine having to, wake up in a new home and go take this test.
But that's what I was thinking too, in my mind.
And I feel like so we just, CFJJ just, I'm on the board of directors there, and they just.
CFJJ
the
is.
Citizens for Juvenile Justice.
Okay.
They're the ones that were really instrumental in raising the age so that we can't put, BIPOC children in jail for nonviolent crimes for the rest of their life, which is great. And so the statistics just came out, and we found, and this is always a conservative estimate, it's usually much higher, that 46% of all the children, of all the children in juvenile facilities right now, 46% are Latino, in DCF and from Worcester.
Dang. That's for the Commonwealth.
The Commonwealth, yeah. And so you think of testing, MCAS, where is it happening? And then you think of school suspensions, kids dropping out,
The
truancy.
pipeline, the school to prison pipeline is for real.
MCAS is a piece of that pipeline.
And that's what I thought,
Contributor.
because I was thinking as these MCAS requirements are pushed on, or still are, people tend to say, like, I missed 9th grade, 10th grade, whatever the grades is, I didn't do well in none of those. I might as well go out and work at Dunkin' Donuts. At least I can become manager in a year. And I could put food on the table. I ain't got to worry about this test. I go get a GED. GED, you learn. I used to work with GED classes, right? You learn in a GED class. You have to learn in a GED class.
You have
Yeah.
to,
You have to learn all of those subjects. It's like 5 subjects,
Yeah.
but you
There's
got to
dignity,
know them.
But there's dignity in the process.
Yes, you learn
changes,
because it's not like it's still a test, but it's an achievable test based on 5 different criterias, and the emphasis is for you to graduate, but not for you to be, what is a good word? Made to look bad. I want to say,
Well, I mean, I think too.
like oppressed, like
There's a lot
yes,
of emphasis
despond.
on-
Good one.
Yeah,
Yes.
there's a lot of emphasis too on college readiness, and I hear that.
Right.
I mean, I had students who were preparing for Ivy League schools who told me they had not done a research paper yet, and so I signed a damn research paper. But I do really want to also talk about the nature of testing. That, like, speaking from what you were testifying to, right? Like, we have so many students in the Worcester Public Schools who are in the foster care system, and that number is simply expanding. And what does it do to say to a child, this is the week that we're doing testing and that's it? And you have a chance next year on this 1 week.
Yeah.
As opposed to saying, let's look at your entire high school experience and see what you've built.
Exactly.
Right.
Let's look at the standards that you have achieved. Right? Like, there are places where we can do portfolios or other types of high quality education, not to mention the fact that the classes that students do have to pass and the standards that we do have in Massachusetts are higher than most places in the country. And so we certainly also are not looking at students from a disadvantage and saying, you simply cannot do this. We know these students can test.
Yep.
We prepare them. We make them ready for what testing skills look like. But I think there are a lot more important skills in life than testing. And I think that a lot of these students really have those skills, right? Like,
Exactly.
part of also the issue with schools that we're not tapping in to the skills that students already do have. Like, the fact that students really are already doing budgeting and thinking about money and are constantly bombarded with advertising and aspects like this. Like, there's really so much that students have experience with that we can be pulling into the classroom. But the issue with a standardized test is that often, right, like, they'll ask a stupid question like about grams and like what would be most likely to be, let's say, 6 grams, and they say a parakeet instead of a bird. Like, it's such a specific cultural notion that absolutely abolishes students that might not have the same type of exposure
to a parakeet versus a bird.
Right.
It's true. My son,
know?
I homeschool
That
my
is so funny, but so crazy.
And that's why, as a high school teacher, like, I might give a test one year and look at a test question and go, gee, why did all these students really struggle with this? And think, it could have been the sentence structure. It could have been certain coded words, right? Like, and I can go back and reassess, is this question really assessing the content, or is it assessing something else? And if it is something else, should it be something I'm explicitly teaching?
Oh, wow.
But
So we're
that is
going
what happens with
backwards. This is
responsive
the
teaching
same type of...
And being able to use the data to inform your own teaching. Like, as a teacher, I don't even get the data back from MCAS until a year and a half sometimes.
That is a problem
students
because you
already
can't
took the
base
test.
anything
How?
on the new... You got to base it on the new student, the old test,
Right,
and the
right.
old grades. And then
And-
you have to do and prepare for a new
Right.
semester, a new experience for these students. And you can't even use the data from last year because it
inform your
doesn't...
teaching.
It's not even
It's
sent to you.
So like what the data from the test purports to even measure is not actually how it's used. So it's like, if you want to actually talk about standards and you want to actually talk about data, this is just not reliable. It's not valid. And it doesn't have practical use.
All right, so let's talk about you brought it up earlier, individuals who are coming in from somewhere else and they get dropped in Worcester because sometimes that's what happens. You show up and next thing you know, they put you're here in Worcester, you're in a tenement, 3 flights up, you get on a bus, you go to school, new experience, you're learning a new language, a new culture, a new everything, and you're 16 years old or 15 years old and you got this test coming up in the end of the year.
One of 30 in each of your classrooms, if not more.
Okay, I forgot about that part because now you're one of a high number.
Right.
Right. Correction officers don't even have that many to deal with in one pod. So now you have instructors that have to basically, because you have to bring everybody in, you got to get them all on one accord. Sometimes that's difficult, but sometimes you can create magic.
Absolutely.
You bring these kids together, you give them an opportunity to learn, and then you present this test. Hey, you got to take this test. So you threw everything what they were learning. Now we don't need to learn anymore. You just got to remember how to take this test.
Yeah, but you see that movie Lean on Me, right? Where the teacher was able to teach the kids, but there was no MCAS. You know what I mean?
Right, right.
They were able to engage and embrace, the lesson plans and kind of see themselves in the lesson, right?
Yeah.
I can see it now. Lean on MCAS.
Lean on MCAS.
That's a new button.
We'll lean on you. And it's not that our kids can't. Just let me be clear. Our children can pass the test if they had the proper preparation to pass the test. And again, there's some students that go to Kumon for 3 years before they study this test. And so the disparity is just unfair. And if you see, I don't know if you know that Baker, the lieutenant governor, I don't know what they gave her to do this, to betray the community. However, they came out to speak against this MCAS. Like, Baker, go back to retirement. Like, what are you doing here? Because it's such a threat. It's such a threat because they're afraid. And there's more to this. It's a racial component. Latinos are the majority almost. It's going to happen
So
within
it's
5
a
years.
pathway for incarceration because there's more money in jails than it is in schools.
And you have to pass the test in English. So it's not actually testing how well you understand.
Because I know they
your
used to
math
do GD in
concepts.
Spanish.
Right. It doesn't matter how well you understand your math concepts, your biology concepts.
Yes.
What you truly have to understand is how to use a computer and how to speak English to be able to even start to access this test.
So this is what they do. So some students we had these conversations during COVID, and they would say, we know the work.
Right.
All we do is memorize the questions. So they have questions that are similar to what the MCAS questions will be.
Okay.
And they study those so they're not memorizing the MCAS, they're memorizing the language, which is insane.
Right.
Asking somebody is, like I said.
So it's like you got to follow this pattern. ... dash. As long as you get the ... dash, no matter what they put in there, you're going to remember the ... dash. As long as it lines
You
up like that.
understand what the question means.
Yeah.
And, and so, but it doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
Well, but speaking of following the patterns too, right? Like, I just was kind of looking at some of the statistics, and that we know that corporations have been making millions off of this test for a long time. So Pearson was originally writing MCAS, and now we're contracting with a New Hampshire company, which is amazing.
The Bill Gates Foundation is involved.
Right, and
Of the test, the
New Hampshire, known for
MCAS
their
test?
education,
Wow.
right? That they don't even tax the fund. So good luck out there. So I think really, it's just sad to see how monetizing and corporatizing education has really just lowered our standards. And then they want to run a campaign that it's gonna increase the standards, and it's unfortunate, but when you follow the money, it makes sense why this is even a discussion.
Right, because if you follow the money, it may line up that the same corporations that are building the jails are building these tests.
And not only that, so add another layer of just I don't know, to think of a word. So when children don't perform on these tests, we're wide open to privatization, charter schools. So they'll say, oh, you're not doing great there. We're going to come in, and they're going to get a voucher. They're going to get permission to open up a school there. So and then what happens? That's a private school with private interests and funders. So not only is the test privately funded, but so is the residual, right?
Yeah,
Of
absolutely.
what this
Yeah.
test
And
brings.
Wow.
unfortunately, the original bill was to end receivership as well as the MCAS. And so, it was a little heartbreaking to see us kind of have to sacrifice some of those values, but truly, MCAS has been the guise under which they have been able to use state receivership and bring in CEOs to control these schools.
Southbridge, receivership. They have no power, no control over their schools, and students are thrown into prison.
The schools have tanked. The longevity that educators stay in those systems has absolutely disappeared. I've been part of the union to help support when they chase people out of there who have been dedicated to teaching there for decades because they love the community. And so it's just sad to see that kind of stranglehold of taking away the community control, and it's institutional violence, absolutely.
Institutional violence.
And like we saw it in Worcester this year, that when all of our elected officials came together, we were very clear we did not want another charter school in Worcester, and the state imposed one upon us that like clearly did not even
And it's already
have
harming
an
our students.
Is that the one in Sturbridge or
budget.
something?
It was honestly embarrassing that they even
Didn't they
allowed it to
move
happen.
that? That school is now in Worcester.
So
That's a whole nother
Southbridge
podcast.
Oh, that's a whole nother one.
has now expanded
There's
into
a lot.
Worcester, literally as part of their inception to begin with, because they knew that their funding source was not sustainable. So really, like, then when you start to starve these communities of their funding, it makes total sense why we would keep and continue to impose the test. And this is why I say, you know, the test in general is harmful, but at a minimum, what we can do right now with Yes On 2 is make it so it doesn't continue to also harm our students.
So where can they get information? You have any websites, any places that they can go, social media, anything?
Yeah, but before we go, can we talk about how they raised us? So in the middle of
Oh my God, thank you.
Okay, yeah. This is
Yes.
important.
Raised us.
So
Right. So also, right, COVID happens, very real, very serious health concern. But they did find time to bring us back to school just in time for MCAS. And then
they raised us.
the summer after that, they raised the standards for passing MCAS. So it was
With all
very
the learning loss.
clearly meant
How
to set us
did
to
that-
fail. And
yeah.
20 and 30 points.
could not possibly be data informed. So
add insult
now,
to injury.
So that
But they also
who
refused-
comes up with this?
they also
The
refused
school
to hold
board
schools
or the
harmless.
DCDS
The
DESE?
Department of Education. Yeah, so then they refused to hold schools and their education funding harmless with the new updates.
We got Tim Murray saying, "Oh, keep the MCAS." You know, we know that it needs to go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's so nuanced, but it's just detrimental. It's harsh.
But why would the Tim Murray Chamber of Commerce want to talk about keep the MCAS unless it has something to do with
Unless
business?
he got jobs for them, he got business jobs for them.
That's what I'm saying. Like, what do you get? What is that?
They don't like it. They don't like they don't. You know,
They like-
They
What's good
took
for
affirmative
business is
action, right?
millions
Yeah,
of
yeah, yeah.
government
Which was
dollars
due,
into
which was
private
just
business.
fairness.
Yeah.
And now they want to keep us down. And
Right.
it's just I don't even know if they're.
But
aware
that
they're
is
doing
the
it.
point that is the
Institutional
killer
white
to me.
supremacy
That
culture.
how these people who other people look at as things,
Was children go to Georgetown.
as
children
they
go-
look at them as more. I think because of their situations, their positions and their influence. And I look at it like you're not helping me. Why would I promote you?
Well, and part of what I love about what you're saying is that when this came push to shove and we had this bill in the legislature and we said we think you need to move with us to end receivership and to end the MCAS, they said no. And so we said, well, we'll take it to the ballot and we'll let the people decide how they feel about MCAS. And sure, it's a little bit of a watered down space, but at least, we can stop our students from being hurt. And at least we've now helped people understand more about the harm of MCAS so that when we come around the second time and we say, it's really time to end this.
And didn't he do like a
You'll
Donald Trump and
understand
put out
why.
like a full page ad to talk about why
MCAS?
MCAS was bad? That just happened. Yeah,
Why MCAS is bad?
why it needs to stay. Why canceling it is
It's
not the right
harmful.
move. You know,
Okay.
like why? Nobody asked.
It's like, why nobody asked you?
No one asked you. Oh my God. It's just Cycle Part 5. Like, I don't think anyone
Tell
asked
them
you.
where to go to get information because some of these people
Yes.
don't have any of
And I
this.
just want to thank
Yeah.
you for this opportunity to
Yeah,
speak on
yeah,
this.
yeah.
It's such an important issue, something I'm connected to. I will forever fight, and this is the first step for MCAS. There's more to come.
Yes.
And I want to thank you, Hannah, for being such a dedicated educator. Who
It is
fights for
past
our
my
kids.
bedtime.
Yes.
Well, thank you for hanging out. We're going to wrap this up, but I would love a website or
Yes, find
or
us Yes On 2. We're on Facebook. We're on the
YesOn2.com.
internet. Just Google us. Yes On 2. You will find us. You will find where you're meant to be.
that's what's
Yeah,
up.
So yes on two, yes on two, yes on two.
That's where we are going to leave it, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you're at in the world. We want to thank you for being here. Thank these two wonderful activists for being engaged and engaging us and you. And we look forward to seeing what happens next week at about 8:00. About this time next week, we're going to be knowing some things. So, y'all guys have a great night.